The name Geng that is pronounced in the English slang is actually pronounced as Chen, but I'm gonna stick with Geng because it's a lot more simpler to all of you. The primary myth name is called Yinglong. Geng is one of the 4 dragons of China, aside from Qinglong, which is Azura dragon, aka Mengzhang, Zhulong, and Bingyi. They're not your ordinary dragon, but rather the dragons of all dragons. Others believe that Geng created the universe single-handedly by herself, while I read some Chinese posts stating that it was actually all 4 of the dragons all together. It's believed that Geng is so big that she fills the entire universe. Way to keep that in check, Yongshi. Geng is one of the few dragons that has wings in Chinese mythology, which makes her stand out from all the other dragons. Geng is also known as the dragon of the rain. That's why she's water element. She created the universe by making the rain falls from the heaven, and it is she who has the power to make both the sun and moon disappear. There are so many legends about the water dragon descended from the heaven to help humanity, such as the legend behind China's Yellow River, Huanghe. It was she who made the flood happen, or so I believe. But one thing is true about Geng is that when she spoke, all the deities, all the gods in the 9 heavens would listen and follow her order. Hence is why she is known as the teacher and leaders of the gods. This links specifically to the power of her Functor, which boosts all Tian's modifier damage. Yes, that means that if you want to pull Geng, you ought to be pulling for her Functor because it's going to help in team building for Tian modifiers a lot. There are so many variations of story about Geng, but one thing that stays true to the mythological counterpart in the game is that she's water element because she made the rain falls. She has a dragon-like design and she's pretty big herself. Maybe not as big as the Vermilion bird, but big enough to make me feel secure. The design, in my opinion, is spot on. I really like how they don't go with a dragon tail or trying too hard, but rather kept it simple with a horn and just a very elegant aesthetic. I really appreciate this design. Thank you so much, Yongshi. She is my favorite waifu. What's up, guys? It's Zackie here. I just want to inform you guys that I'll be skipping Mengzhang guide on my channel as the quality I put on Geng video takes a little bit of time with Lunar New Year's coming up and also my responsibility at my workplace increasing due to promotion. It's been really hard to maintain my schedule. I sincerely apologize, but I want to let you know that do check content creators like Playsome, Further Beyond Gaming, Aether, as I sincerely believe that they put a lot of work and a lot of details to the character breakdown video. That alone, I'm not very experienced with Mengzhang, so I don't want to talk about him like I messed up with Jingwu, about the yellow coats and stuff like that, but that's for another story. Geng is the Tian faction, water element, rage mechanism, and a mid-range type. I know she's a range type, but she's not a very long range. Geng in summary is a World Pro dragging enemy to a singular point and making it easy for the entire team AoE attack to be unleashed. Aside that, she provides a great amount of DPS while having no problem maintaining her rage mechanism. She's definitely not stronger than Jingwu, but with Ziming, the Black Tortoise of the 4 mythological beasts releasing in 2.9, who knows what awaits her since together they have the popular chakra attack known as the Rasengan. Geng's kit. Usually when it comes to kit explanation, it gets kinda confusing. If you want to spare your time, check the timestamp for the rotation summary. So Geng basic attack has 2 advantages in fully executing it. Yes, you're gonna be finishing her basic attack because there's 2 reasons to do it. When she does it, she pulls enemy to the center point, making it a lot easier for the team to launch attack. And second, she generates an insane amount of rage point. This makes it a lot easier for players to pilot compared to Jingwu. I mean, it's better for players to pilot Jingwu because of her importance in rotation. But if you have trouble and want a much more relaxing playstyle, Geng is an easier option. The basic attack with 6 combo execution deals a total damage of 1446% water damage that is equivalent to a lot of modifier skill attack. The 4th stage of the combo will gather enemy to a single point and deal a lifting attack. This is very important in the Aether codes, while the 6th stage will do a knockdown damage. Fully executing Geng's basic attack will generate a total of 64 rage points. Because the most important generation comes from her 5th and 6th combo, as you can see right here, it gains a lot, so you really have to finish her basic attack as the frontal one doesn't generate that much. Geng's skill 1 and skill 2 has 2 modes, which are Yin, Black, and Yang, the White. I'll place it on the top of the screen so you can use it as a reference. Geng usually start out with Yang, which is the white version, first at the base of the battle, executing either skill. First, depending on skill 1 or 2, it will convert the skill into Yin version. Casting skill 1 or skill 2 will grant you a yin or yang mark depending on which mode of the skill you're casting. Up to 4 mark can be gained total for Geng Chen. If player is to gain the 5th mark, the first mark will disappear. These marks are important because they are required to trigger skill 3, so we'll leave that aside first. Skill 1. Both yin and yang version of the skill are almost similar in animation, and damage values are 1684% water damage, but yang version, which is the white, will deal a lifting attack and gain yang mark. Yin version will gather enemy to the center point and gain yin mark. If you're in a hurry to gather enemy, you can always just do the basic attack first, because obviously I don't see the need for you to rush to the yin version. Now skill 1 has always been a dragon backflipping skill, so here's my tips. You can actually do a cancel animation over here. So for example, what I'm showing you right here. Upon casting after like, I don't know, 0.25 seconds, you can actually use a dodge skill to do a cancel animation and continue on with skill 2 or 3 or using your ultimate, depending on which you want to do. I won't go so detailed into it because I'm pretty sure this takes practicing, but it's not really that hard. You can probably get it in day 1, so don't stress about it so much, right? And what I'd really do is just grab the timing that the dragon reaches the top, dodge, and cast any skill I want as the dragon descends. Another thing to keep in mind is that both versions of the skill shares a single cooldown. Very similar to skill 1, both versions of skill 2 deals the same amount of damage, which is 1684% water damage, with yang version lifting enemies and yin just does damage. Both are also similar because they will also provide you with a yin or yang mark. And also one thing is that they both share a same cooldown. Skill 3 is what I would like to call the skill reset. Both versions of the skill will slow down 50% speed of the enemy for 1.5 seconds. Might be little, but trust me, this is a lot, and you'll be able to tell it when you're on the field. Okay, allow me to make explanation simple over here. Probably not, because I suck at it. Remember when I said Geng Chen start out with Yang, aka the white version of the mode? Skill 3 will only be available if you have the first 2 Yang marks. Upon casting, Geng Chen deals a total of 2246% water damage and consume the 2 Yang mark. An anchor point will be placed on the middle of the casted field, pulling enemy to the center for 8 seconds. Unless you're dealing with a boss fight and they move really fast and move out of the range of the whirlpool, then it will be pretty much useless. So this will also remove cooldown for skill 1 and 2. And not only that, it will change them to yin version, which is the black version. Very similar to skill 1 and skill 2, after casting, skill 3 will convert into the black version, which is the yin version. It deals lesser damage of total of 1497% damage, but after that, a debuff field will be casted on the field. Now every second, any random enemy in that field will be attacked 4 times, aka a damage over time field debuff. Each of these hits deals 120% water damage. The field lasts for 8 seconds, so 8 times 4 equals to 32 hit, which is equivalent to 3,840% water damage. This comes especially helpful against single boss fight, but if they move around, that can be kinda annoying, but very useful when there is a lot of enemies. You soon realize that this is just an entire rotation because you are now back to Yang mode with no cooldown. The only problem with Geng Chen gameplay for me is that you have to keep your rage bar up while casting skill in between. If it bothers you so much, maybe you can use the Rage Meowcat or Hera ultimate to save rage mechanism on skill 3. That's really up to you, but I don't think you really need that because Geng Chen is not the main DPS. She's more like a supporting DPS while also providing buff for the team and debuff for the enemy. Another problem is also that unlike skill 1 and skill 2 sharing similar cooldowns, skill 3 does not share a single cooldown. Each version of Yin and Yang has its separate cooldown. Both Yin and Yang version of the skill has a total of 16-second cooldown. Upon swapping, Other is actually running behind the background. You might be thinking about the Warp Flashback Core 3, which decreased cooldown for skill 3, but sadly this is not available for Geng Chen on her Warp build. Perhaps the dev thing it'll make her even more broken, I don't know. The gameplay of Geng Chen is just simple. Basic attack, cast skill in between, try to do some cancel animation, and while that, just keep your rage bar in check. That's really just it. Geng Chen dodge is actually not bad. Rarely OP characters don't have 0 time, but consider how OP Geng Chen is already. She also has 0 time, and that's pretty sick actually. Now, depending on which mode Geng Chen is, she'll gain a yin or a yang mark every time she dodge. That depends on your skill tree. Now, of course, there is a cooldown on how you gain the yin or yang mark. Every time you trigger a 0 time, depending on which mode you are, you will gain a yin or yang mark. So how do I tell which mode am I in Geng Chen? You know by simply paying attention to skill tree. If skill tree looks like this, that means every time you dodge, you get a yang mark. If skill tree looks like that, it means you're in the yin mode. Every time you dodge, you get a yin mark. But like I said, if you're confused about what Geng Chen is, really just cast basic attack, dodge anytime you can because that's what it's dodging for, and just maintain your rage mechanism while casting spell in between. Now, Geng Chen ultimate is a slash, and that's pretty much it. It does do a decent amount of DPS of 2807%. Geng Chen ultimate chains with 3 characters Ling Guang, but Ling Guang is much more preferred for Jingwu due to maintain a floating mode, Divine Grace, Field Rate, and also Fire debuff and stuff like that, so I don't recommend it. Luliang is quite not the meta, but still an optimal choice. Now, Ziming is a water element and does Rasengan with Geng Chen, so I can kinda see they'll actually both pair well, but who knows, let's look into the future in the future. What did I just say? Similar to every other modifier, we have 3 Aether path. Now, of course, for Geng Chen build, the most recommended one by the CN community would be the red Aether codes, followed by the blue one. Now, both of her red and blue Aether codes are the only one we'll only be talking about, and both of these will be affected by her Functor. Let's take a look at the red Aether codes first. Red 1. All enemies in the lifted state have their actions slowed to 30%. Max lifted duration increased by 100%. I'm not entirely sure what this is. And if you take a look at Aether codes 2, when skill 1 Yang or skill 2 Yang last strike hits, reset enemy's max lifted duration. Max reset 3 times. Red 3. After casting skill 3 Yang, inflict armor break status to all enemies, decreasing their defense by 5%. This defense debuff lasts for 12 seconds. When skill 3 Yang gathers enemy, inflict stagnate status to enemies unaffected by gather, lasts 5 seconds. So she's going to gather enemy, and then the one that's not gathered, like boss for example, is going to get stagnate. When skill 3 Yang random attack hit, inflict 5% all elemental resistance decrease, lasts 12 seconds, max 4 stacks for each enemy. So it can be stacked 4 times, which is an equivalent to 20%. Now this is actually very useful since you already have 5% top D decrease of defense, and then you got the elemental resistance debuff by 20%. I cannot tell you what stagnate is because it's really not mentioned in her kit. I would take a look at the blue Aether codes. Blue 1 deals AoE damage when enemy lands, dealing 128% water damage. This effect can only trigger once every 0.2 seconds, very useful. When last sequence of basic attack hit, lifted enemies forcibly cause them to land, hit, or skill 2 Ying will also lift enemies. And for blue 3, after casting skill 3 Yang, self attack increased by 16%. Lasts for 12 seconds. When skill 3 Yang gathers enemy, inflict heavy abyss status to elite and leaders enemies within gather range, and normal enemies unaffected by gather last 12 seconds. When any teammate hits enemies under heavy abyss status, self-trigger an attack, dealing 128% water damage. This effect can only be triggered once every second, and this damage multiplier will scale according to skill tree level. Now, this heavy abyss will also be affected by the Functor as well as the armor break, stagnate. So let's take a look at her Functor to decide which Aether path should we pick. Now, Geng Chen definitely needs her Functor, otherwise she's just a vacuum cleaner, pulling enemy to the center and doing some damage over time, nothing else. Let's see what her Functor does. Number 1. Final damage of all Tian modifier is increased by 5% to 20% depending on level. This provided with the Tian faction buff is absolutely mad lad. Number 2. Melee and ranged damage of Tian modifiers are increased by 2% to 8% depending on Functor's level. And number 3 is related to the Red Aether code. Enemy can be stagnant again if player choose Red Aether code 3, cooldown brought down to 27 seconds to 21 seconds depending on level. I don't think you need to pay attention to this. It's just a bonus, it's a lot faster. Number 4. Increase armor piercing debuff on her Red Aether code's build by 6 to 8% depending on level. When enemy with modifier point bar appear, aka bosses, gain the bar by 8 to 50% depending on level. When you exit modified mode, you'll gain some modified point by some percentage. Okay, last perk. Now the 7th perk of her Functor. Independent damage dealt from Geng Chen herself is to lifted enemies or enemies under heavy abyss status is increased by 8 to 32% depending on level. Now what's heavy abyss? Heavy abyss is only available if you choose the blue Aether codes number. Oh, it's on the screen. I can't remember which one. So to sum it all, her Functor further improved Tian modifier's damage. Makes a great solo unit if you're using blue Aether codes. Sigil recommendation: Mermaid's Tear. Increase water damage and decrease water resistance debuff. Also increase crit rate. Lord of Heaven. This is going to be limited, so make sure you watch out for this. Range damage increased by 10%. When a normal attack hits, blah blah blah, just read everything by yourself. Spartan Battle Cry. Now this is actually useful because it increased the skill damage of rage modifier by 10%, decrease the rage consumption. So if you're having problem managing the rage, and you feel like you want a Spartan Battle Cry, that's actually very good. Griffin's Pride is mostly used if you're going to Omega Geng Chen. It's very useful to increase her critical rate. If you're playing the Mermaid's Tear and Lord of Heaven, the recommended build is 1, 2, 3 for Mermaid's Tear, while 4, 5, 6 for Lord of Heaven. But I recommend mine as the subset does have different benefit, but it comes down to what stat you're looking for, what kind of stat you're rolling. As for substat, if you haven't followed this channel enough, prioritize 888, which is pure attack, critical rate, critical damage, and then water element attack, and mainly just DPS. These are the recommended warps that I would recommend. The best team. Jingwu, Lingguang, and Geng Chen definitely is the best combo out there for a long run. With Lingguang providing fire damage to Jingwu and debuff for enemy, Geng Chen to roll in enemy, damage over time, debuff, and Functor Tian faction buff, and final damage buff. God, this is the mother of all meta for a while. When looking at this team, if you ask my opinion, I would prioritize Geng Chen's Functor since it's universal damage buff for all Tian modifier, while Lingguang only focuses on fire team, so Geng Chen's Functor first, Lingguang second, and Jingwu would be last. Hades and Hera, this is more of a me thing. Remember that Hades has her puppet duet barrage thing, and Geng Chen comes pretty handy here by pulling enemy in and then Hades releasing her puppet barrage. Now this is very optional, this is a me thing, right? Another team I would recommend is Oceanus and Leviathan. This is more to a water damage team, and I remember stating that Oceanus actually buffed water damage slightly for the team, I can't remember how much, and Leviathan is a pretty decent healer, so you can actually replace the Meow to the Rage Meow Cat rather than the AI, the healing cat, retaining your party's member damage while allowing Geng Chen to be a great main DPS. And in the future, she is definitely gonna pair with Ziming. Well, we don't know what she does, but another one team that I think is great to pair with, which I actually tried myself, is Lu Wu and Geng Chen. Now, it's complicated, but Lu Wu kind of gathers enemy and Geng Chen kind of gathers enemy. It's really fun to play around. It's not the strongest team, but it's very, very fun considering that Lu Wu is also under Tian modifier. Now, Geng Chen has 2 skins, one Sensei see-through bra skin, which I actually purchased it, and another gacha swimsuit summer skin, which F2P has a opportunity to pull with their shifted star. But I think it's about 7 to 90 pulls of the real modifier pool to guarantee it. There's also like a background for Geng Chen skin, which is also a separate pulling banner. But again, you don't have to pull for it, right? You don't have to pull for it. And this is the first time Aether Gazer actually has a gacha skin. So that is all, guys. Geng Chen is definitely a future-proof guarantee with her buffing the entire Tian followers, provided if you have her Functor. Anyways, keep in mind that you can always pull for Functor anytime, so don't rush it. Thank you all so much for watching. 新年快乐，万事如意，生意兴隆，and happy holiday to all of you. Hey, it's just a gaming channel.